And welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. I'm Ace McKay, always loving the weekends because we get to spend time together. We get to dive deep into our faith and conversations happening at Podcast Central, which are easy to find when you go to EWTN.com/podcast, or if you find a show that you like, particularly subscribe wherever you like to stream, and then that way you don't miss future episodes. Before we get things going this week, let's of course always look into God's Word as we get this week's perspective on the Mass readings with our Word on the Word.
Hey everyone, I'm Melissa, and this is Veronica. Welcome back.
Wait, stop. Sorry. I looked at you and I really shouldn't have done that. Because when you're introing me, I shouldn't go.
This week we want to focus on the second reading.
It's from the first letter to the Corinthians. In it, St. Paul talks about the charisms of the Holy Spirit, which, Melissa, what are charisms?
Basically, they're gifts of the Holy Spirit. And St. Paul talks about how there are many different charisms. There's still one Spirit. Just think about the saints. A lot of them had many different gifts, but they all used their different gifts to build up the one church.
Like St. Padre Pio. Mm-hmm. He read hearts and bilocated. That's pretty big gifts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Mother Angelica is a really good example, even though she isn't canonized. She had great faith in providence, and her wisdom and knowledge really shone through her teachings on the Bible.
And we're blessed enough to get to follow in her mission here at EWTN. But I love her quotes. One of them, my favorite one, is the one about faith. How faith is having one foot on the ground, one foot in the air, and that queasy feeling in your stomach. But I think that's what it takes to live the faith, to be brave. Because she had to have that queasy feeling in her stomach when she started her TV network.
It's really cool to think about that the same spirit that resided in her and Padre Pio and all the other saints is in us today. So that's what we challenge you to think about this week, to reflect on what charisms you may have. And if one doesn't stick out to you, ask God to reveal that to you. You might find out that you have multiple charisms.
True, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Continuing to reflect in a jubilant year as we continue with Word on the Word. You want the full and any of the episodes you might have missed, go to Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast. I'm Ace McKay. As Catholics Coast to Coast dives in this week, Adventures in Imperfect Living talks about when we feel like something still lingers after confession, even when we know that we've been forgiven. Greg and Jennifer are going to dive into what is the common struggle of reconciling God's mercy with the need for purification. Let's get into that today with Adventures in Imperfect Living on this week's Catholics Coast to Coast.
The last show, when you did your finger thing,
I was like,
we totally forgot that there's audio as well, and so it was. As I was editing it, I was like, oh wait, how are people that are listening going to understand this?
Yeah, they're just.
So we just have to remember. I'm reminding you because I'm reminding me. So the other day, you saw a video, and it was something that taught you something in like 30 seconds. And you made a comment, and you said, like I just logged on, and I went to this video, and it taught me this thing in 60 seconds, and that was great. And I just went, yep. You remember this?
Yes, I do.
And so you also kind of bristled when I agreed so quickly. Not bristled strong, but you were like, you knew what my yup meant. What did my yup mean?
Well, we didn't really talk about it, so I don't know if I'm going to be really correct on this, but what I read into your reaction was that you felt like, yes, that's how it should be. Like, this is ultimately a good thing. It was concise.
Yeah.
And that it was somehow good to you.
I'm in this constant struggle or constant search, constant quest. Quest sounds good rather than struggle, doesn't it? It's a quest. I'm questing for.
Now you're beating around the bush for something. What do you tell me?
I'm very aware of the kinds of videos that I watch. I don't watch a lot of long form videos, and our videos are long form, but people like our long form videos. And I'm like, I want to get to the crux of teaching stuff in the middle. I want to get to the crux of teaching things faster. I want to be able to identify the teaching points faster. And so like when you said, when you saw that video, I'm like, yeah, see, that's super great when you can find a quickly helpful thing in a video. And I think part of it, and I've thought about this too, it's just more work that I'm not sure if I want to do, is identifying those little things and then releasing the bits in our show. Like, the last show where you taught how to do the rosary with just your fingers. Pulling that out and exporting just that section out as like a short or something like that. But I just don't know if that actually gets traction or findability on YouTube and that kind of thing. So I go back and forth.
Well, here's what I will say to that. There are times when you do want the information quickly because it depends on the content that you are dipping your toes into to sort of want to consume. If I were watching a lecture, I don't want the quick hit. I want the lecture. Give me the hour. But if I'm watching how to cook, salmon, then I want the quicker result. It just depends on my search and what drove me to the video in the first place.
Yeah. Okay.
That both are good. It's not, you can't give the 30-second tidbit of takeaway for a lecture for content that could change your life, because you need time. You need people to marinate in a topic and let them process and absorb. And that requires time, which is where we sit with our teaching. We need time.
So the giving campaign ended at midnight on December 31st. And there's a reason why I bring it up, even though we say, we're not in fundraising period anymore. Though if you want to give to Rose Jeremy, rosejeremy.com/donate, we always need the funds. But the reason why I bring it up is, I don't know if you saw this morning, Mary, who has donated in the past, this is Mary B. I don't want to say her last name. She signed up as a monthly donor. Did you see this?
Yes.
So here's we're recording this. It's January 6th. So the giving campaign ended 6 days ago. Mary signed up as a monthly donor at $20 a month. Did you see her note that she put in there?
I think so.
She says, "Thank you for staying the course and helping me to grow in my Catholic faith. I love that you are focusing on the rosary. Know that I listen to your podcast or watch the video each time you share. There's so much I relate to as someone in the same age bracket. I pray for you regularly and pray my rosary every day, usually right away in the morning." So one of the blessings of, and this is going to tie back into what we were just talking about, one of the blessings of the giving campaign is that we hear from people, not just financially, but we hear from the Rosary Army community more during that time. And I'll be bluntly honest, it's a terrible, terrible, terrible time for us. The giving campaign. And it's just so wonderful hearing from the people who are impacted and involved in Rosary Army during that time. It's like those little notes, and that note like from Mary, it's so helpful to us. And I throughout the course of the year, I don't realize how much I need it until you start to receive it, right? But she's saying right there, and other people said this during the giving campaign, how much these conversations that you and I have mean to people. And my brain is always of two lines. I can see it, and then I also struggle against it at the same time. I appreciate it, and I struggle against it. And it's just like so many things. It's like when I do a Bible study and I read some truth in there, I can see it, but I struggle with it, right?
Right.
It's
that's not for me.
Well,
it doesn't apply to me.
Or it is for me, but I just don't know how to do it, that type of thing. Yeah. And so there's this huge desire in me to share the faith, to educate people in the faith, to help people know how to live the faith, but at the same time, like just this morning, I was reading in Love of Eternal Wisdom, and I'm reading stuff that St. Louis de Montfort said, and it was actually great. I had to stop and write about my desire to share this information, but is tainted by my past, by my sinfulness, by my unworthiness, by my stupidity, all these things that, listen, I know I've accomplished a lot, but I read his words and I'm like, I'm nowhere near him. And who am I to try to explain any of this stuff? And what was great was then I flipped the page and he says almost the exact same stuff about Solomon, because he's writing about wisdom, the wisdom books, so, wisdom, Sirach, and Proverbs. And he says, I'm an idiot. I'm a worm. And I'm like, okay, so.
Wow, that's perfectly timed.
So when we're trying to figure out how do we teach people, how do we make these things? And I know I talk about it a lot on the podcast of like just constantly, part of the podcast is trying to figure out how to make a podcast that's efficacious to everybody. And part of the efficaciousness, I think, just comes from the struggle. People just need to see people struggle, and which is just weird that our brains are like that.
You're making me, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I have to now because you said the key phrase that I said and was trying to offer some counsel to one of our adult sons who is home from college, and we were talking about his college experience and how it has just been a struggle year after year, and it's almost like intensifying. And so, one, as a parent, it's hard to receive that because you kind of were hoping that he would say, I am so happy at my college. I'm loving it. It's incredible.
Jesus is known to me on a daily basis at this Catholic college
and
I'm going
like,
to.
Man, thank you for, encouraging me to go here, and instead I'm getting an opposite.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, like, what do I say to this? How can I, as a parent, encourage our son? And it's like, but there's something about the struggle. It's like, listen, that might be part of your required necessary formation is that you learn how to struggle and struggle well, because life is going to give you a lot more of that. But there's something about this struggle that I think you're just supposed to go through, and you just need to trust the process. And so while our son has been home for this long, break between semesters, we've had a lot of conversations about the adversities that we've gone through in our life, including those cross-country moves that have affected each family member in a very uniquely different way because of where we were in our life, our age, our life experience, all shapes that.
And for people that don't know, like a little over 10 years ago, we went from the state of Georgia, where we live now, to Colorado, to Indiana, and then back to Georgia. So we did 3 cross-country moves in the course of about
school-age children.
With school-age children in the course of about 6 years.
Right.
And it was disruptive, and it was the exact I experienced a lot of moves growing up, and they screwed me up. And I did not want to repeat that for our children. And now as an adult, and going back to what I was saying about Louis de Montfort and like the screw ups, I'm like, I had no wisdom,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then I did that thing, right? I did that thing to my children that was done to me, that kind of thing. And so anyway, it's that conflict is constantly there.
Right. But then to step back sort of objectively and to sort of look at that past.
Where we are now.
Well, yeah, look at the past experiences that were really hard in the moment.
Yeah.
You don't see the blessing in the moment. You just see the pain of the moment. But a few years outside of the moment, you realize, oh, but wait, if I didn't go through that thing, I would not have met that one person that has affected my current situation in a positive way. And then you realize that's part of the tapestry of God. A lot of times we don't see the tapestry, but God sees the tapestry.
Yeah.
He sees the picture. He's like, but I need you to go there because I know you, and I know how your mind works, and I know what needs to be fixed in you. And the only way to fix that thing is to put you through this fire right now.
Yeah.
And you may need to burn for a long time before you really get that impurity burnt out of you and you are healed. Trust me on this process.
And that terrifies me because I still feel like there's a zillion impurities in me. And even after being tested in fire of all those moves and everything,
Hey, but if you can get purgatory resolved here, more here than when you actually are in it, isn't that better?
Well, but my point is I'm like, this is what I tried to, I was trying to work this through this morning. I know we don't have a lot of time for this. This morning I was trying to work this out in prayer and journaling and reading this Love of Eternal Wisdom again. Every time I read it, or if I read a different version of it, I'm like, oh, why did I get that message 3 years ago when I read this the first time? The older I get, the more impurities I see, and I feel like I'm further away from perfection than I am closer to it because I accumulate more sins. I feel like I said something like this similarly on the last show. And I know that I'm forgiven by the sacrament of reconciliation, but the problem is the forgetting of things is very hard for me. I don't forget. And so they're constantly, and this is part of being someone who's been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I have the disorder of constantly being impacted by my past. And I'm constantly fighting against the feelings that dredge up from the past. And that includes my sinfulness. That includes the knowledge of my sinfulness. I'm acutely aware of my sinfulness. I'm acutely aware of the forgiveness I've been offered. But I also know that there's an incredible amount of, reparation that has to be given up for my faults and the mistakes I made in the past. But Anyway.
Yeah, but you have been forgiven.
I know, but see, okay, all
That's
right.
what you tell me.
All
your sins
listen.
are
I
forgiven.
know, and I know that this is actually a level of confusion, not confusion, a level of struggle for me in reconciling in my brain the level of I've gone to confession, I've been given absolution, I do penance. Then, after doing penance, there's still this lingering sense that's taught that I'll still, depending on the level of my sinfulness, and even though I was absolved, there's still a level of additional penance that I must perform for my forgiveness long term, depending upon the severity of my sinfulness and the stain of which I've caught. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm talking about? Because otherwise,
It's like, I know I'm forgiven, but
right, there's always there's this still sense of I just went to confession, I just was absolved, I just sat in the pew and did my penance, but somewhere between walking from the pew to my truck, even if I was struck by a bus coming through the parking lot at that moment, is there still a level of purgatory that I will have to? I don't know.
like, did it really thoroughly clean me
is there
like you say?
I have this lingering sense that I'm still going to spend time in purgatory no matter what. And I don't know how to erase that.
Yeah, how to it sounds like it's a belief issue, and
It's
you have
something
to really trust them. I'm trusting you, Lord.
No, wait a minute.
You
I'll be honest
say.
because I will say I have been given conflicting information on that thing.
On that point.
On that point. I have by priests and others. And I'm like, I can't get a clear answer on that one. And I hate to say that on a podcast. And I'm sure this is the kind of thing that I'm going to get some other conflicting information. I'm going to hear from Jeff Miller, who's going to give me a question. Jeff, I'm going to go with you.
Go ahead and answer, please.
But then I'm going to get from someone else who's going to go, no, it is this thing.
If you die within 60 seconds of confession, then you're going to heaven.
Well,
but if you go to 5 minutes, you've probably already sinned.
Because here's what didn't happen when you were absolved. No. If you were absolved and you went to okay, from the moment that you did your penance. So I say, I sit down in the pew and I do my penance. If I can do it right then. If the priest didn't give me homework that takes a week.
Yeah.
Which drives me nuts. Because that's even worse. Then I'm like, oh gosh, if I get hit by a bus before I can complete this in the week's time that the priest told me. My concern is that even though I'm forgiven, I'm not transformed. My concupiscence is still there. My tendency towards that sin might still exist. And
that's true.
So in the fact that it's in my thoughts and in my words and what I've done and what I failed to do, I might turn around and see someone who will spark a memory of someone else who hurt me. And then an angry thought involuntarily comes bubbling up to the surface. And then I'm sitting there just for a second too long. Now I'm becoming scrupulous.
Okay.
Right. And then I'm fighting with that.
Oh my gosh, Greg, I got it. You're like the popcorn pot. You grab it, it's clean. Look how clean it is. But then you use it and then you get it dirty. But then you clean it again. But then you use it.
Yeah.
It gets dirty. And then you clean it again.
Oh, but let me say this. But even after, this is my struggle with the popcorn pot. Okay. Every night we make popcorn and I'll put that pot into the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Even though it goes through the dishwasher, getting clean, right?
Yes.
Getting absolved, right? There's still a buildup that happens of the oil on the bottom.
It's still like, it's clean, but I still see a residue.
And then every like once a week we have to take the what's the
like a scouring
the
pad.
scour no what's the
stainless steel wool.
Yeah, the steel wool thing. I have to take the steel wool thing and scrub out the built-in.
Okay, the metaphor.
Right? And that's how I feel. It's like, but because it's not spick and span.
Okay.
Until you do the steel wool.
The analogy.
And the steel wool is like the severe penances that I still need to do throughout life.
The steel wool, that deep layer of cleaning, I think is only possible when we bring that level of contrition to the table. That's the thing. That's the moving angle. Because sometimes we go in, I'm sorry for this and sorry for that. It's like, but only God knows the real level of sorrow that you actually bring to confession. And sometimes you get the gift of tears of like, oh my God, I am so deeply sorry. Like,
Yeah.
I see how it hurt you, and I didn't quite see how I contributed that lash on your back, Jesus, for my sin. But
then
sometimes you see it and sometimes you don't.
But then it comes back to like, see that's what drives me nuts, because then it still is a fault of my own weakness and inability to see something is preventing me from experiencing that full level of forgiveness. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then
However,
that's frustrating, because it's like, well, how do I have that if I'm not given a grace by God to be able to have that?
but I see. Well, I think the step that you're what we need to talk about, what we all do, is that sometimes we don't even want to sit and ask for the grace to have the contrition for the sin. Like we
Okay,
acknowledge
fair
the
enough.
sin, but like, Lord, here it is. Help me know how it hurt you, because that's the missing piece. We don't see how we hurt God. We just see, I know I did something bad and I have to confess. And then we don't move past that. We don't give ourselves time to contemplate. We're in a rush to go get the thing, check the box, and move on with life, and blah, blah, blah. And that's to our disadvantage. So we got to call ourselves out.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing wrong.
And so I'm not trying to sell the love of eternal wisdom,
Yeah.
but hold on, but that's part of, I don't have enough wisdom to be able to get to that point, and so I'm praying for that level of wisdom now at the beginning of the year. So
we're talking about it now and sharing this with our viewers and our listeners.
So
how to confess better.
Real quick, I mean, we didn't know that was going to be the conversation, but obviously the Holy Spirit.
This is what
that's
needed
how
to
the Holy
happen.
Spirit wanted us to start the year with this first podcast.
With our sins.
We raised just under $82,000 as a just to let you know, with the giving campaign. So we fell short of last year by almost $70,000. We were $120,000 short of our goal. So we ask you just to keep praying for this ministry. We know that a couple people were going to donate after the first of the year. It is what it is, and we're just pushing forward, and we'll cut back where we need to cut, and we'll make changes as we need to make changes. But our intention is to still keep pushing forward, and just trusting Jesus that He's going to give us what we need to be able to do this work. So that is what it is. So Thank you to the 250 to 280 people who did make a donation. We just cannot thank you enough. I have written my last handwritten thank you card of the people who actually donated. So over 250 cards, and I prayed for every single one of you. One person said, "Don't send me a card. Don't spin the stamp." I'm like, "What?" Then I got to tell you, he was the hardest one. I ended up praying for him the most because he kept popping up on the list. I went, "Oh, he doesn't want me to." He just said, "Pray for his grandson." Oh, okay. Boy, that's really hard for me to just.
Just let me thank you.
Just let me thank you. Just let me send you a sticker.
This is so hard for me.
And so I ended up praying for him the most. But thank you to all of you. We did want to talk about something you've been doing, but I think let's hold that on for another show. Yeah. I wanted to give a quick health update on you for people who have asked and were concerned.
Yes. Okay. Basically, in the month of November, I did, in fact, go to a cardiologist, and that was a stressful thing, but thank God it all worked out. I found one to go to very close to home, and the first thing that they wanted to do was get me on a heart rate monitor. That was one of those wearable kinds, which is like super awesome, but annoying in its own way. But it's like a wearable, so you put like this film over it, so you can get it wet, you can go to sleep. You just never have to take it off. We
should have taken a picture of it while you were wearing it.
It was this weird looking like a giant Band-Aid, basically. And it was a little annoying because on my skin, I just wanted to scratch it off. But you left it there, and I have to have like a little, like its own smartphone I had to keep within 50 feet of me at all times. So I got used to that, and I did that for 2 weeks, and I had no knowledge of what data was being resulted, but I know it was transmitting to whoever it needed to transmit to. But I was so grateful that it was really monitoring all my heart was doing under all activities, whether it was sleep or going on our 5-mile walks, which we did still continue to do. And so it would kind of capture my normal. But in that, because I was personally so aware of my heart rate being monitored, I was aware of my heart rate. I'm paying attention to my own heart rate, which I don't think I ever really did before.
Yeah.
And something about going to bed at night is where my heart is the most wonky, and I don't like it
Which
at
is
all.
because the whole incident and
Everything happened at night.
Yeah, it all happened at night.
So let's see. So I'm still in the testing
Yeah, so what's
phase.
next? What's next?
The next is, in a couple days, I'm going to do a stress test on a, what do you call those machines?
Treadmill?
A treadmill. Yes. Wow. Haven't been on one in a while. And I have to get an echo done and a couple, like it's like an ultrasound on the carotid artery just to see how that's going. It's things that the ER did not do. So this is more of a deeper dive. And if anything, it's a baseline of my heart's health at this point in my life, which is super good to have no matter what. And we'll get all those results in the month of January, and we'll know finally how my heart health is today.
Yeah. So thank you for the prayers for Jennifer these last couple months. I had the realization 2 nights ago. I was like, oh, she'd be dead for 2 months now if she actually did die that night. So that's a new thing that I have going on, because I can't forget trauma ever. Thank you to all of you for hanging out with us. This is a short first show of the year. We've had these 2 other banked shows that I keep wanting to release, but news needs to happen, and I thought we were going to give more news. Well, we did. The Giving Campaign and Your Health. So the next couple shows are great conversations that I've been waiting to share with people. I think that those will be the next 2. They'll be coming soon. We have other fun stuff that we're working on behind the scenes for all of you. We're so glad that you're part of Rosary Army. If you want to help support us, rosaryarmy.com/donate. If you want to send us feedback, you can do so at feedback@rosaryarmy.com. We love reading the comments. If you're watching the video, the people leave down below. Thank you for being here. As always, make them,
Pray them,
and give them away. God bless, folks.
As we wrestle with how grace, purgatory, and forgiveness play out in our lives, that's Adventures in Imperfect Living. For the full conversation or ones you might have missed, just go to EWTN.com/podcast or find Adventures in Imperfect Living wherever you like to stream so you don't miss what's to come this year. I am Ace McKay. When Catholics Coast to Coast continues, the Catholic gentlemen are checking in to find out more on why only 9% of us complete our New Year's resolutions. So what is it that motivates the 91% of the rest of us to keep those going with the joy of accomplishment? As the Catholic gentleman helped to discuss why resolutions and how the self-discipline comes, we're going to be in a great pursuit of how we as men can also strive to live better. The Catholic gentleman coming up on Catholics Coast to Coast.
The destination for great Catholic audio programming is EWTN Podcast Central, featuring the best of EWTN radio, as well as faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates across the nation, all in one place, all free. If it's central to the faith, you can find it on EWTN Podcast Central. It's like podcast heaven. Visit EWTN.com/radio/podcasts today.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here in the new year on The Catholic Gentleman. We are so blessed that you have decided to spend a moment with us. We are your hosts. I'm John Heinen. We've also got Sam Guzman coming at you in the new year. Sam, how are you doing?
Doing great. Feeling blessed this new year.
Amen. And myself included. And we are here. We're going to talk about this new year resolutions. We're going to talk about self-discipline and perseverance. While it's pertinent right now, it's also something that is pertinent at all times. Why? Because I just looked up recent studies, and the amount of New Year's resolutions that start and actually go to completion, never mind whether they're successful or not, is 9%. So 9% of people who create resolutions actually go through to completion. That might be more than you were thinking, or maybe it might shock you. But regardless, we love talking about this topic on self-discipline, resolutions, perseverance, and all the like. So if you like what we're talking about and you want to get the full extended edition, we come out with longer forms every single week inside of Catholic Gentleman Plus. This month inside of Catholic Gentleman Plus, we are having an intimate conversation about perseverance and what that means for the hearts and minds of men. We have 21 sessions already created with guest experts. We just launched a guest expert with Father Joseph Anthony of the Dominicans on the Rosary. We've had Father Donald Calloway, Father Ambrose Christ, just so many great and amazing individuals. So if you like what we're doing, you want to support us, head over to CatholicGentlemanPlus.com. And finally, I'd like to do a shout out to our show sponsors. We've got two incredible show sponsors today. We've got Ascension Press, who's launching right now their Rosary in a Year with Father Mark Mary. He's been on the show. He's a CFR, an incredible man. And links in the show notes. We're going to talk more about that later. In addition, we also have Exodus 90. We are only about 2 weeks away from launching the 90 days with Exodus 90. Click on that link in the show notes. We'll talk more about them as well. Anyways, as we were talking about, Sam, New Year's resolutions and the like, do you have yours made?
Yeah, I've been thinking this year how I might do things a little bit differently. And so I think I'm setting some bigger categories this year that will give me some flexibility about what falls underneath, like New Year's intentions. Like, I'm going to, really work on my physical health, building myself up physically. How I do that, I have some flexibility underneath that so that I don't get so caught up on, did I do my push-ups today or whatever? Like, it just gives me some subcategories I can have underneath that broader goal of improving my health. So I'm nailing down some of those New Year's resolutions, but by and large, yes, I definitely am focused on beginning the new year well. But as the topic of this episode implies, the bigger element in success, I would say, is perseverance. Because so many people, like you said, that statistic is just shocking. Like so many people just have the best of intentions and then fall off the bandwagon almost immediately. So it's time to be a little more realistic with our goals, but then stick with them. A smaller goal consistently maintained is much better than some grandiose goal that lasts a week. So anyway, we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I completely agree. And I think that, interesting enough, that's why we've got these two show sponsors today. And Father Mark Mary is doing this Rosary in a Year, and he's got 6 different levels that he's walking through. And one of them is just starting out, giving yourself a time a day, very small, a few Hail Marys, right? We've got to grow incrementally into that, lengthier goals that we have. Some, we're doomed to fail, right? If we set ourselves up for, I only read 1 book a year and now I'm going to read 50 books this year, right? When we do something like that, chances are we're not going to be successful. So we're going to talk about that today. Same with Exodus 90. I think that's what makes it so successful, is that there's a beginning, middle, and end, right? And that's so helpful for men. We are looking to actively pursue something, but it's basically a SMART goal where it's very specific, it's measurable, all of those sort of things. It's given to you. There's a time frame, right? That's the T, and it's 90 days, and we know we just have to focus through that. And I think that's one of the beauties of our church, is that we've got these seasons like Lent and like Advent and other things that you can really focus on these. But you're exactly right, that perseverance in physical matters will make way for perseverance in spiritual matters. And that's one of the topics that I really hope to get to today as well, is because we do need to learn how to persevere in these small matters so that it can then, let's say, bleed over into our spiritual lives, where ultimately maintaining faith all the way to the end is our ultimate goal. So I also grabbed a scripture quote from Proverbs here so that our listeners can understand this applies to Sam and myself as well. Proverbs 14, it says, "In much work there shall be abundance." That's work we're talking about. "But where there are many words, there is oftentimes want." And so we're not just here speaking to you, we are also trying to live it as well. And the first topic and first step that we want to talk about is your mindset, right? We have to have the right mindset. You kind of we've been alluding to it, right, Sam? So when you hear having the right mindset, what immediately comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, mindset is really everything, because when you can think about the same exact circumstances in 2 radically different ways. Viktor Frankl talks about this in his amazing book, Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about those who have a sense of meaning or purpose can endure almost anything, whereas those who have no purpose whatsoever, they're kind of nihilistic or despairing about reality, they just collapse under the pressure of life. But it's the same thing with little things like New Year's resolutions as well, where it's like if you look at this as some kind of penance, some kind of misery, some kind of self-punishment, you're going to fail so much faster. You're going to fail almost immediately, actually, because you don't actually want to do it. But if you reframe it as an opportunity to unlock your potential, that potential that God has given you. I mean, I personally believe that each one of us has almost unlimited potential. I mean, we don't even know the upper limit of our potential as human beings. I mean, you look at some of the lives of the saints when they were, little kids or something like that, like their parents probably had no idea the potential that lay hidden within them. But they just kept growing and growing and growing until they became, saints. and each one of us has that potential. The saints weren't special human beings in the sense that they had something extra that we don't. Like, we actually all have that potential deep within us. The problem is almost none of us actually activates it to the level that we could. So instead of seeing New Year's resolutions as some way to just punish yourself and deny yourself sweets and treats and, suffer in the gym and like all of this misery, right? No, like this is a way of unlocking the potential that God has given us by grace, by cooperating with grace. And then you'll never know what will happen. You never know what God will do in your life when you begin that process. So again, it's taking the exact same circumstances, like fasting or prayer or exercise or, getting your finances in order or whatever those New Year's resolutions are. They may seem very simple on the surface, but your mindset determines whether or not you're going to be successful and whether or not those actions have a deeper meaning beyond just, getting your life in order. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, Sam, I completely agree. Exactly what you're saying. I hear in kind of more modern psychology and stuff, what you're talking about is this growth mindset, right? This idea, like you were saying with the saints, where it was never a fixed mindset. It was never that they couldn't achieve great things, right? Because they were doing so with God. They were doing so with Christ. And I think that for me, in the essence, that's something that I have to constantly remember. Now, I've taken the Stoic attitude in the past of, I'm going to do this, white knuckle this. I'm going to require myself to get up every morning. I'm going to require myself to practice the trumpet 3 or 4 hours every single day, come hell or high water. I'm just going to keep on moving forward. But when I'm doing it because I love Christ and I understand that God's grace is there with me, it endless possibilities, right? And a certain degree of joy and peace in the striving and in the struggle end up overcoming me. And I find myself day in and day out wanting to wake up, wanting to get to prayer early, wanting to make sure that I stay consistent with things like working out or pursuing, improvements in my career, etc. Like all of these sort of things are possibilities that all I have to do is stay focused on. And one of the things that I know gets so many people off, especially in resolutions, is when they don't see that immediate noticeable change, right? And so if you have a growth mindset, if you believe that your steady, consistent daily actions will improve your life over time, awesome. But even then we can fall off if we end up not seeing those changes or those gains that we are looking for. And that is a danger that we have to, kind of get rid of in our mindset. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. This idea when maybe I've done it for 2 weeks, but I don't feel like I'm getting better, or something like prayer that I've already brought up, where sometimes you can go for years and still feel like you're struggling to improve in prayer. Like, how do we stay consistent? How do we persevere in those situations?
Yeah, that's a great question because you're going to hit that resistance. Maybe it's right away, maybe it's a little bit down the line, but resistance is huge. And I think what I would say about that is love is always more motivating than fear. So often our New Year's resolutions are driven by fear of some negative outcome. Like, well, if I don't work out, I'm going to gain weight, and that would be bad. I don't want to gain weight. or if I don't get my finances in order, I'm just going to get further and further in debt. That would be bad. If I don't work on my relationship with my spouse, our marriage could go from bad to worse. All these like apocalyptic visions drive so often what we choose to focus on in our New Year's resolutions. But love is a far more powerful motivator, and it will help you persevere when things get difficult. Whereas fear is not a successful source of motivation. You're going to hit the wall, the resistance, you're going to feel the physical discomfort. You're going to feel the mental discomfort of change, and everything in you is going to recoil against that. And we'll maybe get into a little bit later why we fear change so much. But love, on the other hand, if you love health more than you fear disease, if you love your spouse more than you fear the embarrassment of a divorce, if you love God more than you fear sin, like, you're going to have so much more motivation. Love is like a magnetic force. Like, it draws you further and further on. It helps you persevere through difficulties. One of my favorite movies is Cinderella Man. And you know why John Braddock, I think it was like, he fought so fiercely, was because he wasn't just fighting for a title. He was fighting for his family and to put food on the table. And it made him, an absolute beast in the ring, the boxing ring, right? And because love was the motivation. And there's so many other examples of that, but that's what we need. We need to sit down and think about, what do I love more than what I fear? And maybe even write that down. Take the most common New Year's resolution of health, right? Like, do you love like your body working harmoniously? This idea of like, again, like this radiant health that God has wants for you, has designed your body to work in this way, and like everything is humming smoothly, right? Like, do you love that more than you fear being a couch potato and like gaining a bunch of weight and arthritis and high blood pressure and all these things? Like, do you love health more? So that's what I would say, is just like, that helps us push through the resistance.
I am so excited to bring to you, the listeners of The Catholic Gentleman, a powerful new series that our friend Father Mark Mary with Ascension Press is coming out with, called The Rosary in a Year podcast. But this is not just pray the rosary every day for a year, which is amazing and you should be doing it. It is actually so much more. Father Mark Mary is going to help you build a daily habit of prayer by starting small and learning the tools to improve and better your love of daily prayer. He has a full plan that you can download for free now by clicking on that link in the show notes or heading over to ascensionpress.com/gentleman. You are going to learn how to build a daily habit of prayer, form a relationship with Christ and our Blessed Mother, how things like visual art and scripture can better your prayer time, and why devoting yourself to Our Lady is the surest way to Christ and salvation. So I encourage you to click on that link now, or by going over to ascensionpress.com/gentleman and get your free plan and start this journey to be a man or woman more devoted to prayer and loving this essential part of life like never before. This series is going to be phenomenal because it is created by an amazing priest and man, Father Mark Mary, whom I love, and I'm so glad that he's bringing this to us. Yeah, it's excellent. I found myself, specifically with health and working out, looking at each of my kids or my wife and whom I love, and that being the motivator. It's like, you know what? I'm going to get up and work out today for Gemma, my daughter. I'm going to get up and work out today for my wife, because that is such a more lasting and like you said, stronger motivation. I'm so glad that you stated that, because it really does change the mind in a way that is something that's sustainable, right? I'm always loving and choosing love for my wife, for my children. And so they're always there. And when that becomes my decided motivator, when that becomes the reason why I want to stay healthy, for instance, you can stick with it. you can find yourself. And I love that last comment about write it down, because that is so important, right? You have to. And if you're like me, you've heard that a dozen times and not done it. But then when you finally do it, which I have, it changes things. And write it down in a way that you can return to it and you can see it, and that it can be a part of your daily routine. Because when that becomes always in the know, then we find ourselves recalling it to mind so frequently. And so I think that that's a good point, and actually brings on to our next point here after our mindset is your goal. We have to have these goals, right? Goals are so important for men because we just have this natural desire to actively pursue something. It's written within us. And so if we don't have that goal, if it's just some sort of nebulous, like, I'd like to be here someday, I'd like to feel like this someday, you're going to struggle to get today different than yesterday. It's not going to be something that you want to move towards. And so I can't overstate this enough, the importance of setting up a goal and writing down that goal. We've talked about SMART goals in the past, specific, measurable,
attainable.
Attainable. Thank you. Exactly. I know I have it somewhere. And so, and sticking with those, because it helps get us to that next step. So, Sam, what are your thoughts on the importance of having a goal and writing that goal down?
Yeah, I if you don't have a goal, you don't be surprised when you don't reach your destination. I mean, it's like taking a trip. What's the first thing you do in this modern world anyway? You punch in your destination in the GPS, right?
Yeah.
So the GPS knows how to structure your travel based on where you're headed, your goal, right? And it's the same in life. We have to have a goal. We have to have a destination that we're aiming for. And sometimes, like, it's really important to set the goal higher than you actually think you might attain. I know the SMART goals tells you to make it attainable, but sometimes like the goal needs to be big. It needs to be audacious. It needs to be bold. And aim high, like aim for the heavens, like aim for the stars, like just go after it and leave that results in God's hands. Like that's my approach anyway. I can't say it's right for everyone, but for me, like that's what I strive for, is like, and sainthood kind of is that, right? And I think that the modern church, this is maybe a controversial subject, but like I think John Paul II had this intention that we need more ordinary saints. Like we need just people who lived ordinary lives. We don't need St. Joseph of Cupertino, like flying into trees and, things like that, Padre Pio bilocating. And, like we need like ordinary saints that expressed ordinary holiness. And I totally appreciate that sentiment, and I think there's absolutely truth in that. But I think the more traditional view of saints was like, we want heroic virtue, like above and beyond the ordinary, and like the saints to be like almost like this extremely high standard that it sometimes feels like unattainable to ordinary people, but it's also again like shows what is possible when you cooperate completely with grace in your life. You never know what miracles can happen, right? And so while the modern mindset might look at that and be discouraged by that, like I think in traditional mindset, people were motivated by that. Like, oh my goodness, like these saints were so incredible. Like maybe I only get like 1/10 of the way there in my life, but at least I'm going to go after it. Like at least I can see what's possible when I say yes to God's will in my life. And so I'm going to strive for that, whatever that looks like in my life. And I don't think people found it discouraging. And so all that to say though, but have a vision, have a goal, even a mental image of where you're going. Where do I want to be in 5 years? What do I want my wife, my wife, that's a dangerous one. What do I want my life to look like in 5 years, and like literally like sit down and visualize it.
Agreed. And so I want to talk a little bit about that saint and the levels that can be achieved in holiness and in drive and in perseverance, because we got to be careful not to take kind of like a social media image of the saints, in the sense of when you're on social media and you're looking at your friend's Instagram or Facebook account, you're only seeing a snippet, just a bite-sized chunk of their lives. If we look at the saints and we see where they ended up, praise be to God, and that's all we think they got there, you're really missing the mark. When you can read some good biographies of different saints, you start realizing the struggle after the struggle after the struggle. You start reading about St. Alphonsus and his rheumatoid arthritis and everybody who was out to get him and to backbite and to throw him under, and the amount of times that he himself had to struggle to grow in holiness, the amount of times that he had to pray every day, not because he loved Christ, but also because it was the only way that he could stay on the straight and narrow. When you start going through one saint after another and you start learning these things, you start realizing what was required to reach that point, that pinnacle that we're talking about here. And it's perseverance, right? So perseverance is that day in and day out drive, that day out and day commitment. I've heard it referred to as grit, right? To keep on going. It's that passion, that motivation of love, and that consistent drive to get up and to do it better today, or come at it. And that's something that I like to talk about. I keep on coming back to prayer. It's the Catholic Gentleman Podcast, I guess. And so this idea of prayer is that you might wake up 10 mornings in a row and be falling asleep while you're praying. Well, let's re-strategize and figure why that is, and see if day 11 can't be a little bit better. But day 11 is still coming, and we still need to be persistent in waking up and giving our all on day 11. And that's where that perseverance really sets in. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I have had a string of days in a row where I felt like, I'm showing up, Lord, but I'm not mentally there, or I'm not feeling anything out of this, right? And there's a couple dangerous things there, but perseverance, faith, grace is going to get you up on day 11 and make it keep on going. And then the final thing that I wanted to say within this section here on goal is have one goal, one audacious, out there goal, but that when you have a dozen goals, like, just the human mind is not capable of sticking with a dozen goals at a time. And I see that happening so frequently in these resolutions, plural, is that I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this part of my life, I'm going to handle physical, spiritual, and mental. And these are all great things, but we've got to do them incrementally. We got to do them like one goal at a time. And all the saints talk about the importance of just that one persistent goal that we're working towards.
Yeah. No more than three. Like, no more than three. Have a little hierarchy. Like, here's number one, here's number two, here's number three. But human beings can't focus on more than like three things at a time. I mean, I shouldn't say that. You have exceptions like Elon Musk, right? Who's running like 15 companies or something. But they're normal people, no more than three. Really make them as clear as possible as far as what the desired outcome is. Like, again, where do you want to be in a year? Next year at this time, what do you want your life to look like? How do you want it to be different? And I was going to say something about perseverance.
Please.
Like, I think that's such an important point, because we've been trained constantly by our instant gratification culture to want things now. Like Amazon, like 1 day shipping, 2 day shipping, overnight shipping, not fast enough. We're going to have a drone leave the factory, at like
1 hour.
You're going to get it an hour later, so you don't have to wait at all. Like, and if forget about saving money for what you want, we'll give you 30% financing, and you can get it now and buy now, pay later. Like, that's like the new mantra with websites and things like that. Buy now, pay later. And it's like, get it now and then worry about the effort later. Mm-hmm. And we really need to be aware of this as Catholic men, because it does work on our unconscious mind. And I say unconscious because we're not aware of it. But be aware of the power of the culture and that it has on us. And even with diets and exercise, like, I've literally seen people advertising 30-day transformation, or like get fit in 2 weeks, or now they have the weight loss drugs so that you actually don't have to do anything other than take a shot. And, you'll drop 60 pounds overnight or whatever. Like, instant gratification is the enemy of the soul. Grit and perseverance expand your soul. Like, hard times expand your soul. And that's not a popular message these days.
There you have it, the 4 necessities that mark what it means to make your resolutions more successful. More with the Catholic Gentleman available at Podcast Central when you go to EWTN.com/podcast. And remember to like, share, or subscribe wherever you normally stream so then you can keep up with your favorite podcast as well. I'm Ace McKay, bugging out and going home. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Remember, we will be back, and always you can find us at EWTN Extra if you want more of Catholics Coast to Coast and streaming on demand as well. Remember to let God define who you are, and I'll see you again with Catholics Coast to Coast.